So I wanted to just do a quick segment on diet and nutrition. I was watching this video this week on YouTube from the University of California television called Let Food Be Thy Medicine. And it was a really informative panel discussion, but there was a lot of things that I thought that they left out. And since I've only really briefly touched on just like toxicity in terms of diet here on the channel, I wanted to just give my thoughts on what I think is the optimal diet. I'm more or less going to just read a comment that I left on the video, but I won't recite it verbatim. I'll just kind of try to paraphrase. So the first thing that really jumped out to me was that no one mentioned fasting as a way to benefit your health and just remove all the toxins that you have built up and reset your gut. I understand that the premise of this panel discussion was to talk about healing foods, but the fact that all these doctors and people who are in tune with natural health or natural healing mechanisms didn't even mention one-time fasting, that really kind of surprised me. So even though it was a few years ago that the video was published, I think it was like the summer, June 2018, but even just like a simple intermittent fasting schedule of like 16 hours fasting with an 8-hour feeding window, even well before that, had been documented to really be beneficial to health. So that was one thing that kind of surprised me. For my recommendations, just in terms of the optimal diet, obviously fasting isn't sustainable. I mean, you could do intermittent fasting for an extremely extended period of time and be fine, but to do like an extended water fast, that's obviously not sustainable. You're going to have to eat at some point. So when you do eat, I think the most important thing is just an alkaline, inflammation-free, and mucus-free diet is what equates to a healed body. So basically what that means is just avoiding refined sugars, as many starches and grains as you possibly can, especially ones that are non-organic, because there's all sorts of pesticides and chemicals in GMO seeds. So, and all of that stuff has been shown to really just kind of mess with, it can alter your DNA and even your DNA or your gene sequences that you pass down to your children. So if you are going to eat carbs or starches and grains, just make sure that they're organic, obviously. And when you are eating and not doing like a total water fast, just try to limit your feeding window as much as possible. Try to give yourself as long as you can before bed, from the time that you finish eating before the time that you lay down to bed. Try to give yourself ideally 4 to 5 hours just for all of the food that's in your stomach to digest, or at least 2 to 3 hours. Don't eat right before bed, especially dairy, which is really impossible, or not impossible, but very difficult for your stomach to digest. Your body cleans itself at night when you're sleeping. So if in terms of a fasting schedule, I would say it's better to break the fast early in the morning and then stop eating earlier at night instead of trying to go until noon or 11 o'clock and skipping breakfast, which is what I do a lot of the time. But I think it's more beneficial to your improvement to do the opposite, where you eat earlier and stop eating earlier. And moving on from there, they kind of villainized meat, which has been pretty popular lately, especially with the rise of the vegan, or specifically the raw vegan diet. But personally, I don't really think that meat is the enemy. Again, getting back to like GMOs or pesticides, a lot of the times I think where people think meat's bad for you, or it's been proven that reducing your animal protein has been beneficial, I think that has a lot to do with just the low quality or poor grade of the meat. Conventionally raised or factory farmed animals like chickens and cows especially, they get fed, their feed is all GMO, and that's even if it's like actually vegetables or corn or grains. You know, a lot of the times I've heard horror stories about them basically eating like toxic sludge. You know, so I think it has to do more with the quality of the meat than meat itself. Um, I think there's been a lot of studies that's shown that you can only get certain vitamins and minerals from meat, specifically vitamin B12 and vitamin D are only naturally occurring in meat. Besides, obviously, the sun, you can get vitamin D from, and also certain forms of mushrooms have a decent amount of vitamin D. But other than that, if you have a raw vegan diet, you need to supplement to get the vitamin D and B12 that you need. And fortified vitamins like that in supplement form are not as easily absorbed by your body as naturally occurring ones, and they also aren't as high quality as naturally occurring ones. So I don't think meat's necessarily the enemy. You need collagen for all sorts of physiological functions like your joints and your skin and bone health, and grass-fed animal collagen is ideal. It's much superior to plant-based collagen. My biggest beef with the vegan diet, no pun intended, especially the raw vegan diet, is the high amount of oxalates, lectins, and phytoestrogens that they generally contain. Lectins are basically like a self-defense mechanism for plants and like legumes like chickpeas or kidney beans. And it's essentially a poison to ward off things that are trying to eat it. And when you cook the food, you can remove a lot of the lectins. So, I mean, that's what I would say would be recommended for someone who's a vegan, is to try to get some of your food cooked instead of just eating strictly raw. Phytoestrogens, on the other hand, is a totally different story. One of the panelists in the discussion mentions endocrine disruptors and how they're, she mentions them specifically in terms of like additives and stuff used to process food, but generally vegans eat a lot of soy products because obviously that's like the most widely accepted alternative to animal protein. But soy contains a very high amount of phytoestrogens, which basically can throw off your hormones, especially for males. So it really can decrease your testosterone and make you more emotional. Obviously, other things that come with increased estrogen, but soy products, especially like processed soy ones, really aren't good for your body at all. Fermented soy products like tempeh and natto are a little bit better. They tend to have less phytoestrogens in them, but you still should really limit how much soy that you're intaking as a vegan. Even soy's in pretty much everything these days. Like all packaged foods really contain soy. So even for someone who's not a vegan, like an omnivore, they're still getting, and they're an omnivore that's not eating clean organic is getting a lot of phytoestrogens too. So that's just something to take into consideration. And finally, to going back to just the animal products, like diets that have no fish or eggs are also low in EPA and DHA. And our bodies can convert ALA in plant food to EPA and DHA, but not very efficiently. So it's kind of, again, like getting back to what I was talking about with animal protein containing higher quality vitamin D and B12. It's kind of similar to that. So you can get DHA from algae supplements if you are a vegan. So I would recommend doing that. But my biggest recommendation too is, obviously it's up to you to determine if you want to eat meat or not. Everybody has their own reasons for their diet, but I think ideally the best diet for your health, or to optimize your health, is a Mediterranean keto diet that contains wild caught fish, pasture raised eggs, and a small amount of grass fed and finished beef. And with the Mediterranean diet, that's eating a lot of like avocado and olive oil, things that are good in or high in good saturated fats and low amount of processed or packaged foods. So that's something to consider for like a vegan too, is like you can avoid meat all you want, but if you're still eating toxic processed soy products, it's your health isn't going to improve, and ultimately that diet won't be sustainable. So some food for thought. Haha, get it? I hope that helped. I'd love to hear your feedback and stay tuned for more.